Hey guys, today we are in Second Corinthians chapter 4. So Paul has made the defense that he is trustworthy, he is apostle, his message is true. Yesterday he talked about he is, and we all are as Christians, we are ministers or preachers that boldly preach the new covenant, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And because we boldly preach, we pick right up with his message in chapter 4. Therefore, having this ministry of preaching boldly of Jesus Christ by the mercy of God, we do not lose heart. That word lose heart means fainted heart. This basically means that we, because we have Jesus, we stay true. We are supposed to stay on course, but we have renounced disgraceful, underhanded ways. That word disgraceful means diluted. So Paul is saying that we're not diluting the gospel. We're not trying to come in and underhand or trick you into the gospel of Jesus Christ. We're coming in to preach the truth of the gospel. We refuse to practice cunning or to tamper with God's word, but by the open statement of the truth, we would commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God. Once again, saying that the gospel is true, what they preach is true. They're not trying to trick people. They're not trying to use emotion. They're simply coming in and telling the gospel of Jesus Christ and giving people the choice to either believe or to deny. And he goes on with this idea, and he says, and even if our gospel is veiled, even if the gospel of Jesus is not accepted, it is denied, it is veiled or denied to those who are perishing. Paul's making an important point to these Corinthian Christians, but also to us today. That the blindness of unbelievers in no way detracts the clearness of the gospel. Just because somebody doesn't accept the gospel, it doesn't mean that the gospel is less or not enough, okay? The gospel in itself is perfect, and it is what people should be drawn to. But sometimes people deny the gospel for what reason? That's verse 4. In their case, and for the people who deny the gospel of Jesus Christ, the God of this world, that's Satan, right? Satan, sin, has blinded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Satan has blinded their eyes. Now, don't think in your mind that Satan has the upper hand, right? Don't get this idea that Satan can blind people from hearing the gospel so they no longer can accept the gospel. Do you remember in John chapter 3, right? We all know verse 16, right? God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. But you remember what he says after that? Jesus goes on to say in verse 19, he says, I am the light of the world, and I've come into this world, but men love the darkness rather than the light. So when it says that Satan has blinded their eyes, it's not that they didn't have a choice. It's not that they didn't hear the gospel. It's simply that man loves sin and themselves more than the gospel. And so that's what Paul is saying here. So when you read this, don't get this idea that Satan is preventing people from hearing the gospel, okay? He definitely works against people hearing the gospel, but if we preach the gospel, people hear it, they just choose to accept or to deny, right? For what we proclaim, the gospel, is Jesus Christ as Lord, with ourselves as our servants. For God, who said, let light shine out of the darkness, has shone in our hearts. Now, this is a little play on the words of the Old Testament. Genesis chapter 1, in the creation story, God said what? Let there be light and let it shine, right? So here he says, let light shine out of darkness. This is a play on the creation from the very beginning. God said, let light shine. Darkness was not good. That's why God created light. And so here it's the same as the gospel message. The world is dark, and now we are creators. We are the bold preachers, chapter 3, that are sharing the new covenant, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And because of this, notice what Paul says about this. Verse 7, but we have this treasure, the gospel of Jesus Christ, in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. It's interesting. Paul calls us jars of clay. Ever had a clay pot? It's very strong. It weathers well. It holds up well, but it is very fragile, right? It's very fragile. And so Paul is weighing the goodness and the amazingness of the gospel of Jesus Christ, but he's also looking at our bodies who are temporary, who are fragile. And so he's kind of weighing the goodness of God in these fragile pots. That's us, right? And we die within 100 years. Almost every one of us will be dead in 100 years. But the gospel continues to go on. And the reason that God hides the gospel in our lives as clay pots is to what? Is to show the surpassing power that belongs to God and not to us. God's glory and his gospel is manifested because we are weak. We're nobody. We're nothing. And when people like us see us and they say, oh my goodness, Sean loves Jesus. Sean goes to church. Sean acts like this. If Sean can do it, oh, I can do it, right? That's what the gospel is all about. We have something that is so much better inside of us than anything we have on the outside of us, right? And so Paul's just saying that we have this treasure on the inside of us. And he goes through all the way to verse 12, talking about all the things that he himself has gone through, right? That he's been afflicted, he's not been crushed, he's been perplexed. He goes through all these things that he has done. But verse 13, since we have the same spirit of faith, according to what has been written, I believed and so I spoke. This is an important part about Christianity. Faith creates testimony. Faith creates testimony. Whatever you believe in, whatever you have faith in, you will always talk about. You will always testify. If you buy a new car and it's amazing and man, it's fast or it's pretty, or you buy a new house and it's in the right neighborhood, you will tell all of your friends. You'll share it on social media. You take pictures, you take videos, you tell everybody. When somebody's in the shopping, somebody's at Kroger and they say, wow, nice car. You're going to talk about your car. Whatever you have faith in always creates testimony. Here, Paul says, I believe, so I spoke. I believed in Jesus, so I spoke. My faith in Jesus created his testimony. Does your faith in Jesus Christ, does it create testimony? Do you talk about Jesus everywhere you go? Do you talk about him at the grocery store? Do you put him on your social media? Do you look for ways to tell people about your faith and why you go to church and why you serve and why you do the things that you do, why you're reading the Bible 5 days out of a week, reading the whole New Testament in a year? Are you looking for ways to do this? Is your faith creating testimony? Because your faith creates testimony in almost every other area in your life, but does it in your spiritual life? And so Paul says it does for him. So we do not lose heart, verse 16, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. Yesterday, you guys are going to watch this tomorrow, right? Toby got his driver's license, and it's realization that I'm getting older, right? I turned 41 in a couple days. Right. And so every day, our body is getting older. It's getting frailer. You're starting to notice more aches and pains and all types of things. Right. And so even though our body is wasting away, that clay pot, right? That jar of clay, even though it's being weathered and broken down, the gospel inside of you is still renewing you inside out every day. For this light momentary affliction that we call life, living, is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. As we look not to the things that are seen, that are earthly, that are temporary, but to the things that are unseen, heavenly, eternal. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. We on this earth are living with a precious gospel inside of us. And even though we're wasting away, Jesus' gospel is prevailing. And the simple question is, are we helping to move it forward? Are we praying and are helping his kingdom come and his will be done? Or is it all about us? Is our faith creating testimony? Paul says his is, but are we? Hope that makes sense. And we will see you tomorrow in chapter 5. God bless.